Hey, what's up? It's me, Lex, back at you with another class overview. Today I'm going to be going over the Druid, one of my personal favorite classes, just as far as the flavor and fun goes. I have 3 builds for you today. I got the Wildland Druid, Rot at level 5, and various growling noises at level 7. I'm sorry, I'm not going to pronounce that one for you. It's a little bit of a struggle. As with all of the other spellcasting classes, when we do eventually get to them, a lot of your class identity is going to be taken up by these spells that you select. I have not gone all out on selecting spells because, honestly, it's quite a lot, and it's the type of thing that you can kind of decide as you go. Instead, I've selected like standout examples to try and make some design points. Anyway, starting off with Wildland, this is an animal order druid. As a druid, you get access to primal spellcasting and a specific order of your choice from this list. Each of them gives you some unique abilities, including a trained skill, a granted feat, an order spell, and some additional anathema, in addition to your normal druidic anathema, which requires you to basically respect nature. So animal order here gives you athletics, an animal companion, the heal animal order spell, which is a very good one, I'll get into that in a second, and makes it so that you cannot commit wanton cruelty to animals or kill animals unnecessarily. So basically you have to respect nature in general, and you have to respect animals with this build. All druids get access to the shield block general feats, which allows you to, when you have a shield raised, spend your reaction to defend yourself. I don't believe I included a shield into any of these builds, but it is a good thing to keep note of. That's a way to utilize your reaction, and a lot of the time, if you have an extra action on your turn as a spellcaster, you can spend that raising your shield to help with your generally lower armor class. Druids struggle with this a lot less in a secondary form by being trained in medium armor, which means that druids generally can get away with being strength-based more than dexterity-based. Also, another thing is, since we're building into a spellcaster, I'm able to kind of get a little bit more playful with our heritage choices. So here, with Wildland at level 2, we have the Alvarin heritage, which is half-elf before the remaster. The elf atavism ancestry feat, which gives you the heritage benefits of a specific elf bloodline. And that grants us the woodland elf, which allows us to climb trees better and take cover within forest terrain. So this is a very natural-based animal companion druid. As such, we're choosing for our voice of nature, which is another thing all druids get. They get the ability to either talk to plants or animals, kind of, not talk, but communicate rudimentarily with. We choose animal empathy. And then at level 2, we're going to pick up the Beastmaster dedication and combat climber skill feats. All of this together means that in our natural setting, our woodland terrain, we're going to be able to climb very effectively while we're fighting, and we're going to have a couple of companions, because Beastmaster, the dedication, allows you to have 2 different animal companions, and you can call them with a minute in exploration mode to switch them out for one another. So if one gets injured, or the other one is the one that you are looking to take advantage of some of the unique skills of, you basically have 2 following you at all times, but only one of them is really engaged in combat and exploration mode. We also pick up a staff, just because it's a simple weapon that makes sense for casters to have. Some studded leather armor to get the most out of our armor class here. Druid, again, because you have medium armor training, is very effective at maxing out your armor class in a way that something like, say, a wizard might not be. For the rest of our gear, I didn't slot anything in particular in, though we do have training in medicine, so it might be worth buying yourself a healer's toolkit. And as always, it's a generally good idea to buy an adventurer's pack for yourself. It has a lot of things that are useful out in the wilds and in dungeons. What really stands out, though, are the spell options. We'll start with the order spell that you get from the animal order, Heal Animal. For the cost of a focus point, so you can recharge this every 10 minutes, you basically get the heal spell, but only on a living animal that's willing. So this means that you get a max rank heal spell, though, on your animal companions once per combat, which is very effective at maintaining kind of an additional pool of hit points on the front line. They're getting their actions off. It's very effective. As for recommendations for spells, what I have here is the Tame cantrip, which is pretty good for being able to speak with various animals that you might meet. Not speak with, but communicate with by making them friendly. It only works on domesticated animals, unfortunately, but it is still in keeping with the theme and quite effective at what it does. Other than that, you might want to invest into some higher range cantrips, because you don't want to be moving a whole lot with your animal companion up in the front. So something like frostbite. Additionally, I picked up some things to kind of highlight at low ranks when you have, well, low levels, when you have very small repertoires of spells to pull from. It can be very important to make sure that those spells have either lasting or incredibly potent effects. So, for example, heal. I will never not recommend having heal if you're on the primal list. It's just such an incredibly potent spell. It can really save the day in encounters. Grease, which has a duration of a minute, so you can either cover the floor on an area or make an object greasy, slippery, what have you. And I also picked up Camel Spit here for the same reason. It has a duration of a minute, and it lets you get 3 one-action spell attacks by sustaining it. Which would allow you to, say, if you were closing the distance on someone, you could cast Camel Spit, stride up. On your next turn, maybe you command your animal to run in as well. You can stride up, and then you can spit. It lets you get some damage when you have not a lot of versatility in your actions, because you're trying to close a gap or something like that. Moving on to level 5 with Rot. We're using the new, well, one of the 2 new Druid orders, the Spore order. This one is focused on mushrooms and decay and stuff like that. This gives you intimidation training, a Leshy familiar, but it has to be a fungus Leshy, and the Mushroom Patch order spell. Added to your anathema is that you cannot commit wanton cruelty to mold or fungi. Can't kill them unnecessarily or interfere with the natural processes of decay. It also counts as a variant of the Leaf Order, which means that if there are any feats you would like to take that have the Leaf Order as a prerequisite, and Leaf is just kind of about plants and nature in general, then you can pick them up with this as well. We're going to hop right over to the focus spell for that to show off Mushroom Patch. And Rot here, because of Mushroom Patch, is kind of focused on battlefield control, terrain manipulation, AoE effects, stuff like that. Mushroom Patch takes one of your focus points, and then somewhere within, I believe it's, let's check. Yeah, within 60 feet, a 10-foot radius burst for a minute becomes difficult terrain. When you cast it, and at the beginning of each round, it releases a cloud of spores that triggers a fortitude save on enemies. And even on a success, they become dazzled. which they can only remove if they leave the area and then also spend a manipulate action rubbing their eyes. On a failure, they're just dazzled for a round. They can't even remove it if they exit the area. And on a critical failure, they become dazzled and slowed 1 for a round. Now, again, with spellcasters, you shouldn't be relying on failure or critical failure effects. The success effect is far more likely in the vast majority of enemies that you're going to be facing. But it is important to take note of the fact, specifically here, that this is going to create a scalingly large area of difficult terrain. They'll need to leave it and spend an action rubbing their eyes, or else take that penalty with Dazzled, where they have a 20% chance to just miss anything they do that targets. It heightens at 6th rank to 120 feet in a 30-foot burst, and at 9th rank, it goes 150 feet, a 40 radius burst, and blinds creatures instead of dazzling, which is very, very strong. This is an incredibly potent area control thing, and particularly because of its heightening. If it didn't heighten, I would say that this would be a pretty mediocre spell, but even at 5th level, 3rd rank, getting a 20-foot radius burst of difficult terrain for one of your focus points, this is going to make you a very consistent controller on the battlefield. You can kind of shepherd enemies where you want them, you can force them out of advantageous terrain, or else they're going to be suffering quite a few penalties. Additionally, for our heritage here, we're going to be picking up the Dromar heritage. This is the half-orc, and the Tusk's ancestry feat, which gives us actually a Tusk's unarmed attack. Over in our gear, we've purchased hand wraps of Mighty Blows, +1 striking, to give that benefit to our Tusks. And we've chosen Plant Empathy to go with the fact that we are Spore Order Druids and kind of focused on mushrooms, because even though I don't think mushrooms are plants in real life, I could be wrong about that, they count as so here. Down at level 2, we pick up Order Explorer into the Flame Order, which gives us the Fire Lung feat. This allows you to breathe normally in ash and smoke areas and ignore the concealed condition from smoke, and the flat check to recover from persistent fire damage is only 10 instead of 15. Generally a lot of very good things about fire. But then we also add the anathema that we cannot allow unnatural fires to spread or prevent natural fires from occurring in a way that harms the environment. We also are going to pick up Battle Medicine, because this is a fully unarmed build here. So we have the free hands and the free movement to run around and help people. We'll get into that some more with the spells in a minute. We pick up the Fleet General feat to give us some speed at level 3. Order Magic, which gives us the Flame Order's focus spell, which also gives us a second focus point. So now, in addition to the Mushroom Patch, allowing us to control areas with difficult terrain, Wildfire allows us to control areas with automatic damage. This lets you choose a 10-foot burst within 30 feet, and as long as you sustain it up to a minute, any creature that moves on the ground through the area takes 2 fire damage per square they move into. Notably, as was clarified, I believe even before Howl of the Wild, but it was clarified even more so in Howl of the Wild, large creatures do not trigger this multiple times. If you're a 2x2 creature and you move 1 square to the left, you're still only moving into 1 square of Wildfire. It's not going to do 8 damage instead of 2. Which is unfortunate, but does make a lot of sense as far as game balance goes. And then also, if they end their turn in the area, they take persistent fire damage unless they succeeded a reflex save. This generally is just a good way to disincentivize creatures pushing their way through. Another way to lock off areas. And we also take the Godless Healing feat. As long as you don't worship a deity and you have Battle Medicine, this feat lets you regain additional hit points from treat wounds and Battle Medicine. And Battle Medicine's cooldown on you is only an hour instead of a day. This is very good when picked up among multiple party members in your party, because, you know, you're able to heal more consistently throughout the day. In several encounters, you all have the ability to heal one another. And at level 5, we also pick up Orc Ferocity, which gives us a way to use our reaction once per day to stay standing at 1 hit point instead of getting knocked out. As for the spells, I picked up Eat Fire here in the cantrips just to show off with the Flame Order, because you ignore the concealment from smoke. This allows you to gain resistance to fire damage and then spend an action belching smoke into a 5-foot burst within 20 feet, which, because it's from fire, you get to ignore it, which means it's a, you know, you get to make the enemies struggle combating you and your group. Well, you are able to bypass it. Very effective. And then building more into the kind of control plant-based nature of Rot here, we have Mud Pit at level 1, 60-foot range, 15-foot burst of difficult terrain. This would obviously be a backup to your mushroom patch, but it does have a larger burst at the level that you get it at, and a bit more range. But these can obviously kind of combine with one another by putting one next to the other to create a much larger area total that something would have to move through. Protector Tree here is a very solid spell. We'll be looking at it again if and when we get to Kineticist. It lets you select a square within range, and it conjures a tree there. And whenever an ally adjacent to that tree would get hit by a strike, the tree interposes and takes the damage first. So this is just flat damage mitigation on strikes, which is very strong. Wooden Fists. Now, this is part of the fun of this build, and this is why I maxed out the athletics skill here. This is a first rank spell that lets your hands swell into tree trunks twice as big as their current size, which makes your fists deal a d6 of bludgeoning damage, lose the non-lethal trait, and have the reach trait. And as you see, as it heightens, it makes your fists become striking, greater striking, and major striking, and increases the duration as well. As is, it's only a minute. However, because it is your fists doing so, and these are just modifying your normal unarmed attacks, the hand wraps that we got for our tusks apply to them too. So you don't need to upcast this, as long as you're keeping up with your hand wraps for any reason other than the duration boosts. Notably though, it gives you the reach trait, which would allow you to, with your hands, use your athletics to trip, grapple, etc., any sort of maneuvers you would like to make at range using Rot at the cost of a spell slot. Now, notably, there is a sidebar in, I believe, the monster building guidelines that notes that if something is grappling with reach using an appendage, that generally the grappled creature is able to attack them back. So this is weaker than something like the gill hook, where you can grapple at range with a weapon, because they can't attack that and deal damage to you, whereas with this, because it's your fists, there's an argument to be had that they can attack it and damage you. I would say it's 50-50, because it's transforming your fists into tree trunks, so it's like kind of growing over with wood, and it's magical. But the morph trait is there, indicating as well that it is still your arms. It's really up to your GM, but just note that it's not a guarantee that you'll be safe from retaliation just because you're at range. What it does mean, though, is that you have a much larger area of effect that you can threaten and protect. At rank 2, we pick up Albatross Curse, which gives you and all your allies bonuses on attacks against a target, unless they spend an action striking the albatross that you've cursed them with to remove it, which then gives them a will save against your spell DC. On a success, they're stupefied for a round. On a failure, they roll twice and take the worst result on their next will save for a minute. And on a critical failure, it's that, but for an hour. This is a very good spell. It gives your entire team a lot of bonuses, and you can stack on some other will save related things if they do decide to spend an action striking, where that has also already cost them some of their multiple attack penalty and an action on a follow-up turn. It's very effective. Mist continues with the area denial theme. This allows you to place down concealing mist in a 20-foot burst. Specifically, this is here because the mushroom patch dazzles and the mist conceals. So these two stack with one another. And if you were, say, in mist and a creature was in your mushroom patch and they were dazzled and they tried to attack you, they would have to make a DC 5 flat check for concealed and a DC 5 flat check for being dazzled, which 2 points of failure there makes it much more likely that they're going to fail to hit you. Tremor Sense is a very useful spell. This is in here specifically for being able to counteract your own abilities here. If you have the ability to sense tremors throughout the ground, then you can walk into these concealing mists and into these dazzling mushroom areas and be able to see everything just fine. Imprecise sense, of note, allows you to know exactly what square something is in, but you still have to make DC 5 flat checks to target it because it is still concealed to you. So this won't bypass the oh yeah, just mist. It used to be called something else, so I always get it confused. The mist spell, but it would allow you to bypass the dazzled condition on your mushroom patch. So this can be very effective. It's also notably very good for being able to determine things on, say, the other side of walls, stuff like that. It's very hard to be able to utilize other senses in that way. For example, echolocation is another very strong sense, one that we tend to put on like familiars and stuff like that, because it allows them to tell when things are, say, sneaking up behind you more reasonably. But Tremor Sense lets you sense things through walls, which can be very effective. And then finally at rank 3, we just have some go-tos for the primal list. Lightning Bolt, which does a lot of damage in a big line. And Slow, which is a very good debuffing spell for your enemies. As for gear, we picked up a breastplate. This is a strength-focused build, so that you can take the most advantage out of wooden fists as possible. And the tusks are all we need when combined with our hand wraps. Plenty of gold left over for whatever skill items or scrolls you might desire. I'm also going to take a step back over to Wildland because that talk of familiars actually reminded me that I never went over Wildland's animal companions here. You have an antelope and a young bear. You could select whichever ones you desired, obviously. The statistics of animal companions tend to lack in comparison with their masters, but it is still a pool of hit points on the front line. A lot of various abilities that you can take advantage of that you might not have. For example, the antelope is a mount and has low light vision. In this case, we do too, but that could be worth noting. Speed of 40 feet, which is much faster than us, etc. And the same thing with the bear. Scent as a 30-foot imprecise sense, and things like that. Now back over to our final druid, we have various growling noises. Yes. This is our final druid. They're an Untamed Order druid. Previously this was known as Wild Shape. This gives you a focus spell called Untamed Form, as well as Untamed Shift, but Untamed Form is the main one. It allows you to spend a focus point to transform yourself into a variety of different forms that you gain access to through form feats. essentially what this is giving you is repeatable top rank spell slot form spells at the cost of some of your class features. And so you kind of have to weigh your class features that you want to spend on other things with class features that you want to spend keeping up with the increasing power level of some of these form spells. Because unfortunately in Pathfinder, things like animal form do not scale to the end of the game. Even though as an Untamed Order Druid, your Untamed Form lets you use your own attack modifier with a +2 status bonus, if it would be higher than the granted one. Eventually the form spells armor classes fall behind what the later ones are going to get to. So you have to spend some of your feats to keep up. That's an important thing to note. Secondarily, you are still a full spellcaster, so you have a smaller pool of hit points. You don't have a lot of combat maneuvers or damage increasing abilities. So you want to look out for that, be careful, and be ready to drop out of your form spells if a heal spell here or a control spell there would be more useful to your team. But back into the skills, or the feats that we've selected over here. We pick up the Fleet General feat so that we can get in position a little bit better. Natural Ambition so that we can both have plant and animal empathy, because this one's fully going for like embracing nature, being part of it instead of like a warden of it. And at level 2, we're going to be picking up the Fighter Dedication. This doesn't really give us anything right now. Martial weapon training, and then either acrobatics or athletics. But it is useful when we get to level 4. I'll show you that in a second. We pick up Intimidating Glare, just so that we have the ability to demoralize. There are some specific items you can get, because by default, when you're transformed, you can't speak, and you can't use manipulate actions that require hands. In addition, you can not spellcast either. But there are some items that allow you to speak, which would allow you to do things like demoralize. There's, at level 3, the Toughness General feat. If we're going to be on the front line, we're maxing out our Constitution and our Strength to get our attack bonuses up, and we're maxing out our hit points with Toughness. Consequently, we're also taking some penalties to our Wisdom, which I'll get into when we get to the spells category. At level 4, we're going to pick up Reactive Striker. Something very important is that when you're shapeshifted, it's going to be a challenge to fill your actions, usually, because you're not as potent with your strikes as many of the martial classes are. You don't have things to fill in. And so that's why we're taking the Fighter Dedication, grabbing Reactive Striker, and later on even more stuff from Fighter, is so that we can be effective and potent on the front line. We're also going to pick up Titan Wrestler at level 4, so that we can grapple things even larger as we're maxing out our athletics here. Our form spells are going to make us big. This lets us grapple things even bigger. So we're never going to meet anything that we're not going to be able to grapple. At level 5, we pick up General Training for Incredible Initiative. Because you need to cast a spell before you're able to really get into the fight, going high up in initiative is going to be a very important thing to this build. At level 6, we spend our class speed on Basic Maneuver to grab the Intimidating Strike Fighter feat. Unfortunately, a lot of the feats that we can pick up from Fighter require things, for example, like you have a hand free, or making strikes with weapons. And so we have to take what we can get. Intimidating Strike is a good way to get more potency out of our actions here. We're not going to be very effective or very reliable at hitting second attacks on a turn. So being able to spend 2 actions striking and getting off an Intimidating Strike is going to be far more potent for us. And this also allows us to essentially kind of turn our animal form into this very thematic, frightful presence beast as they keep running up on things and like mauling them and making them frightened 1 or frightened 2. I will note, at certain levels, because of your ability to substitute in your own attack modifier with a bonus, you can actually, I believe, match or get close to the fighting potency of an actual fighter, which means that you can kind of build for these critical hits. Even though it's not going to be a reliable thing across all levels, at certain levels it's going to be a very effective build. We'll also pick up Catfall if we're going full animal, might as well. It lets us treat falls as shorter than they are. And at level 7, we pick up Graft Technician. This is from the new book, Howl of the Wild. It allows you to create and implant grafts. It gives you the formulas for it and bonuses to applying them. We're going to go right over to the gear section for that, actually, where we have a few grafts. In addition to hand wraps of Mighty Blows, giving us +1 potency on our attacks, we have the bioluminescent stripes graft, which gives you the ability to glow in a 20-foot radius and dim light for 20 feet past that as an action. We have the gliding membranes, which let us treat falls as 25 feet shorter. And even if we take fall damage, we land on our feet by succeeding at a low DC, DC 15, acrobatics check. Piercing horn and venom glands, which gives us a D8 piercing horn attack and a D4 10-foot range increment poison spray ranged unarmed attack that sickens on a critical hit. Now, notably, the Untamed Form changes your form into something else and makes it so that you can only use the granted strikes there. But items that you have still provide their passive bonuses. You can't activate them, but it means specifically the bioluminescent stripes and the gliding membranes that we've implanted into ourselves still give us their benefits. So all of the forms that we're transforming into, we can glow by spending an action activating it. And if we fall, we treat the fall as shorter, and even if we take falling damage, we succeed on an acrobatics check to not fall prone in all of our different forms. It's very fun. I'm very pleased with how the grafts interact with the wild shape, Untamed Form abilities. And then you have a large amount of gold as well to supplement with scrolls, various skill items again, anything like that. Getting into the spells themselves, because we have foregone some of our wisdom, we're not an entirely unpotent spellcaster. I should note that. Since the expected outcome of spells is already going to be that the creature is succeeding, losing a point or two off of your spellcasting modifier isn't going to be the end of the world. However, it is still something important to note and try to build around when you're preparing your spells. So, for example, here, I have a lot of healing and buffing spells, specifically the heal spell, the enlarge spell, which allows you to make someone else or yourself large and clumsy, give them a bit of reach and some bonuses to damage. But I also have prepped here next to haste Fireball, which, it's a reflex save. The DC is going to be a bit lower because you don't have as high of a wisdom score, but it's still a good way to, say you're in your animal form and you see that the enemies are kind of grouping up. Maybe they're even weak to fire damage. So you're fighting a bunch of evil ents or some such, and they group up to try and get into this big attack. Maybe there's a swarm enemy. You can spend an action dismissing your animal form, and then 2 actions immediately casting a fireball. It's very easy to drop out of your forms by dismissing them as an action, and then spend another action, 2 actions, casting a spell, since most of them are that. And that's a lot of the potency that you get as a wild-shaped druid, is that you're able to participate on the front line with decent armor class, decent attacks, and, middling damage. but then at any point you can dismiss the spell and come back to being a full spellcaster. You don't even forego some of your casting prowess to do so. Like, for example, the cleric, they have their war priest subclass, or doctrine, I guess I should say, which allows them to forego some of their proficiency scaling on their casting for better defenses and better offense abilities. You don't forego that here. The only thing that you forego is the first 2 actions of every combat as you go into your form. Anyway, and then at rank 4, I have another important thing to point out here with dinosaur form, which is that at level 8 is when you would get the ferocious shape Druid feat. Sorry about that. Which allows you to transform into dinosaur forms when you use Untamed Form. But here at level 7, you still have the ability to prepare that spell. So you can get some forms that you might be interested in picking up 1 level earlier by picking them up with your actual spell slots. And I have that next to Wall of Fire here as well. Overall, this is a very fun build. Something else that I should note, and this is just overall for the Druid class, because you have the ability to build into strength with your medium armor, and because you have the ability to get into melee combat with a lot of your spells, a lot of your orders, a lot of the various options available to you, it can be very worth it to spend your additional points in your ability scores boosting up saves. So for example here, the 3 save skills are Dexterity, Constitution, and Wisdom. And here on various growling noises, I have all 3 of them at +3. Constitution obviously giving you more HP, but for example, Dexterity, I'm wearing studded leather, but I could easily be wearing medium armor with a breastplate or something like that and be able to lower my Dexterity. I decided to forego that so that I would have a higher reflex save, and especially if you're going to be getting into combat like you will on an Untamed Order Druid, it can be very important to be sure that you're taking care of your saves so that you're not incapacitated by a fireball or a control spell or some poison, something like that. Overall, Druid is a very potent and very versatile class. Here you have 290 extra gold. You could very easily invest into a lot of scrolls, a lot of skill items. I repeat that over and over. You could also be picking up shields. You won't be able to use them when you're in your Untamed form because your gear either drops on the ground or gets absorbed into you. There are a few battle forms you can take that have hands and can use manipulate actions, which allows you to allow your shield to drop when you shapeshift, and then you spend an action picking it up. And then that allows you to, in that form, use that shield. Because there's nothing prohibiting you from raising a shield or shield blocking at that point. It's a little clumsy. Some game masters will be like, oh, no, you know what, I don't want you dropping your shield every combat. I'm just going to say that shield won't absorb into you. It really depends on your table. Don't rely on it at a Pathfinder society, for example. But overall, I like Druid quite a lot. And it would be remiss of me to not promote my own work here. I have currently 1 singular published book, or addition onto Pathfinder. It is the Beast Soul Druid class archetype. I just love the Untamed Form Druid. This allows you to forgo some of your spell casting to increase the potency of your form spells, specifically through the Untamed Form. Because the issue that a lot of them face in the base game here is, for example, if you look here, focus spells are always heightened to their maximum rank, and Untamed Form gives you the effects of the form spell at the rank it's heightened to, which means, for example, Animal Form here, as soon as you reach level 7, and it's heightening it to rank 4, your battle form is always going to be large. It gives you reach and additional temporary hit points, etc. But it also means that if you're in a smaller room, and especially when you get to the higher ranks, like level 9, when it heightens to 5th rank, your battle form will be huge. It's a 3x3. That's not going to fit into everywhere. And because you need space to expand to cast the spells in the first place, it can run into some struggles, stuff like that. And that was what I tried to write around. But anyways, I keep putting this in the description, and I think I'm going to say it here. Let me know what you liked, let me know what you didn't, and let me know what class you'd like to see next time down in the comments below. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope you learned something. See you next time. See you next time.